Good evening, I'm Bakhtiar Sanova and you're watching A News. Let's see the top stories shaping our world. Canada follows the UK with plans to recognize Palestinian state. United States introduces new sanctions against Iran, prompting a strong response from Tehran. Ukraine's capital, Kiev, struck by a barrage of missiles and drones, with 6 people confirmed dead. Canada will recognize the state of Palestine following similar moves by the UK and France. The decision hinged on Palestinian reforms and has drawn criticism from Israel, calling it a reward to Hamas.
Canada will recognize a Palestinian state at the United Nations General Assembly this September, joining the UK and France in a coordinated diplomatic shift. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney says the move hinges on Palestinian Authority reforms, including elections that exclude Hamas.
For these reasons, Canada intends to recognise the State of Palestine during the session of the United Nations General Assembly in September 2025. This intention is based on the willingness of the Palestinian Authority to undertake essential reforms, including the promise by its president, Mahmoud Abbas, to hold general elections in 2026 and not to militarize the Palestinian state.
This comes after UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer confirmed plans to recognise Palestine unless Israel agrees to a ceasefire and a lasting peace agreement.
So today, as part of this process towards peace, I can confirm the UK will recognise the State of Palestine by the United Nations General Assembly in September, unless the Israeli government takes substantive steps to end the appalling situation in Gaza, agree to a ceasefire, and commit to a long-term sustainable peace, reviving the prospect of a two-state solution.
This move comes after French President Macron became the first G7 leader last week to publicly endorse recognising Palestine on the platform X. Israel has condemned the recognition plans, calling them a reward to Hamas. Critics argue that recognition now risks undermining efforts to reach a ceasefire and could further inflame tensions in the region. However, supporters say it reflects frustration with stalled peace talks and the worsening humanitarian crisis in Gaza and the West Bank. If the UK and France proceed, the US will be the only permanent UN Security Council member not recognising a Palestinian state. The diplomatic shift signals a growing frustration within Western capitals over the long-running Israeli-Palestinian conflict and raises questions about how this will affect future peace negotiations.
A joint humanitarian effort by Jordan and the United Arab Emirates have seen airdrops over Gaza continue. But while aid trickles in, critics say it's far from enough to meet the desperate needs on the ground, and pressure is mounting across the Arab world.
Airdrops over Gaza continued its joint Gallant Night 3 operation. 2 cargo planes, 1 Jordanian, 1 Emirati, delivered around 15 tons of humanitarian aid, including food and medical supplies. The deliveries come after growing criticism on social media, where many across the Arab world have questioned the limited regional response to Gaza's deepening humanitarian crisis. Not only Jordan, but Egypt has also joined in sending humanitarian aid by air to the Strip. According to Egyptian military officials, 4 transport planes departed with supplies to ease severe shortages amid restricted ground access. The total aid dropped in recent days, now totals around 73 tons. This comes after Israel announced limited permission for aid delivery and paused military operations in some areas. However, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency criticised the move, saying they fall far short of addressing the worsening famine situation. The World Food Programme also says airdrops alone cannot meet the needs of the 2 million people living in Gaza. As food stocks ran out, the World Health Organization is warning of mass starvation. The Gaza Health Ministry says 154 people, including 89 children, have died of malnutrition, most in recent weeks. A global hunger monitor said on Tuesday that a famine scenario is unfolding. Israel says it has no aim to starve Gaza.
The United States has announced its most significant Iran-related sanctions since 2018. It targets more than 115 individuals, entities and vessels tied to Tehran's global oil shipping network. Tehran condemns the move as a direct attack on its economy.
The U.S. Treasury Department on Wednesday unveiled a major wave of sanctions targeting over 115 Iran-linked individuals, entities and vessels in what officials call the most significant Iran-related sanctions action since 2018. The move intensifies the Trump administration's maximum pressure campaign, following last month's bombing of key Iranian nuclear sites. At the center of the sanctions is Mohammad Hossein Shamkhani, son of senior Supreme Leader Advisor Ali Shamkhani. According to Treasury, Shamkhani operates a vast global shipping network through intermediaries that facilitate the sale of Iranian and Russian oil, generating tens of billions of dollars in illicit revenue to support Tehran. The sanctions affect 15 shipping companies, 52 vessels, 12 individuals, and 53 entities across 17 countries, including Panama and Italy. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson condemned the sanctions as a hostile U.S. act, calling them an evil attempt to undermine Iran's economy and public welfare. The EU had also sanctioned Shamkhani earlier this month over ties to the Russian oil trade. While the U.S. insists the move is Iran-focused, officials acknowledge the action will impact Russia as well. The announcement comes amid dim prospects for renewed U.S.-Iran diplomacy following recent military escalations.
Iran's Foreign Ministry spokesman Ismail Baghei has strongly condemned the U.S. major new sanctions on real persons, legal entities and vessels involved in its oil and energy sector, describing them as criminal acts violating fundamental principles of international law.
Foreign Ministry spokesman Baghei strongly criticized the sweeping U.S. sanctions targeting over 100 Iranian ships and entities, describing them as unilateral and illegal measures that, according to him, constituted a criminal act. He argued that these sanctions violated fundamental principles of international law and human rights and could be considered a form of crime against humanity. In a statement denouncing U.S. sanctions on Iran's oil trading network, Baghei further claimed that the United States should be held accountable for what he called gross violations of human rights resulting from the imposition of these sanctions. On 30th July, the U.S. announced its largest to-date sanctions on more than 115 individuals, entities, and vessels linked to Iran as part of its maximum pressure campaign against Tehran. The new sanctions against Iran were imposed in the wake of the 12-day Israeli-U.S. war in June, after Iran said it will not discontinue its nuclear enrichment right as a signatory of the Non-Proliferation Treaty and as a member of the International Atomic Energy Agency. The U.S. administration has been frequently using sanctions plus tariffs as its fundamental foreign policy tools. President Donald Trump has added personal power play to sanctions and tariffs in his global economic policy, while there are doubts about how much of its shifting strategy is substance and how much is performance. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei said earlier this week that Washington is using the nuclear program, which is a manifestation of the country's scientific power, as a pretext to confront Tehran through using sanctions and military aggression. Turaj Shiralilu, reporting for A News TV, Tehran.
A wave of Russian missile and drone strikes hit Ukraine's capital Kiev early Thursday morning, killing at least 6 people, including a 6-year-old child, and injuring more than 40 people. The attack is one of the most intense in recent months.
Multiple explosions shook Kiev in the early hours of July 31st. In a span of just 23 seconds, a coordinated barrage of missiles and drones struck the Ukrainian capital. Local officials say at least 6 people were killed and dozens more injured in the strike, including a young boy.
There was a second air raid alert. I got up, saw that 5 cruise missiles were coming. I tried to wake my wife, then there were explosions. Our daughter is now in the hospital.
Among the worst hit areas was the central Solomyansky district, where apartment buildings were left in ruins. Footage released by Ukraine's Interior Minister showed emergency crews recovering the body of a child from the rubble. Interior Minister Ihor Klimenko said missile fragments had been recovered, and investigators are analysing the strike's trajectory and origin.
We had just come back from the bomb shelter. The alert had just been cancelled, and then boom, we thought it was safe.
As new air raid sirens sounded, survivors were forced to take cover once again. Emergency teams remain on high alert amid fears of renewed attacks.
The building across from us collapsed completely. I have friends there. I don't know if they're alive. This is so sad and horrible.
Authorities say more than 40 people were injured in Thursday's attack. Rescue and recovery operations are still underway, and officials caution the death toll may rise. Ukraine's air defense claims to have intercepted several incoming missiles, but confirmed that a number of warheads reached civilian areas. This marks one of the deadliest attacks on Kiev in recent months, as Russia intensifies its long-range strikes amid continued fighting on the Eastern Front.
In Ukraine, Parliament has voted to reverse a controversial law that had significantly weakened 2 of the country's key anti-corruption bodies. The legislation passed last week sparked widespread domestic and international criticism, threatening Ukraine's reform agenda and EU aspirations. The reversal marks an attempt to restore confidence, but questions remain about political will and institutional independence in Kiev. To discuss this, we are joined from London by Daniela Mello, political analyst, scientist. Daniela, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Daniela, let's begin with the broader context. What led to the initial adoption of the law that restricted the powers of Ukraine's anti-corruption agencies?
Well, according to the Zelensky government, warrantless raids were justified on the National Anti-Corruption Bureau and the Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office on suspicion and belief that Russian intelligence had infiltrated these offices. This is a highly contested issue inside or vision inside and outside of Ukraine, but that's the justification that the government offered to legitimize subordinating both of these independent agencies, which were created back in 2015 after the Euromaidan protests and after Yanukovych was long gone from the government. But basically, this is the justification that Zelensky has put forth in order to subordinate his agencies to his prosecutor general. Now, an important thing to note here, and this is at the heart of a lot of the protests that happen in the streets of Kiev as well, is that the prosecutor general is appointed by Zelensky himself. So effectively, what this law would do, and what Ukrainians are protesting, was to politicize and subordinate these independent agencies to political power. And certainly from a democratic standpoint, this would be problematic.
Daniela, what do you think? Is it a genuine course correction or more of a political maneuvers?
Today's decision to backtrack on this policy and to reinstate the independence of these agencies, I would say it can be primarily read as a response to the European response, which was perhaps the strongest that Zelensky has received, certainly over the past few months, because I think it's important to highlight that the European Union announced that it would be cutting 1.5 billion euros in its aid package to Ukraine on the basis that the guidelines for good governance were not being met. This was as strong a warning as Zelensky has gotten from his European allies, and it came reportedly with phone calls from the top leaders of the European Union. We're speaking about Ursula von der Leyen and Antonio Costa, calling Kiev directly to warn him of strong concerns regarding this decision. And it's also a problem of image. This is a critical juncture in which the Europeans have worked very, very hard to try to persuade the American president, President Trump, to indirectly continue to support Ukraine. And by this, I mean to sell the weapons that will be supplying the Ukrainian war front, to allow those weapons to be bought by the Europeans and for the Europeans to distribute them to the Ukrainians. So after all of this effort, it felt like, certainly from the European standpoint, it felt like Mr. Zelensky was shooting himself in the foot and providing some fodder for detractors like Viktor Orban to continue to pressure European partners to not just slow down their help towards Ukraine, but to potentially consider not allowing Ukraine to become a member of the European Union.
So looking ahead, what structural or legal protections are needed to ensure the independence of anti-corruption institutions in Ukraine?
Well, the European Union has a number of standards that it hopes that the countries in the process of accession meet, not necessarily overnight, and certainly there's a clear understanding that during a situation like this, Ukraine is at war, that many of these good governance policies cannot be met in a very fast timeline. But there are serious concerns about circumventing democratic institutions. Of course, some of that, Zelensky can be justified in claiming that at times of war, that's sometimes necessary and that war powers are warranted. But given the history of Ukraine and given the desire of the Ukrainian, of a great number of the Ukrainian people to democratize the country, to rid the country of years of corruption, and to put the country on the path to joining the West, to joining Europe in the European Union and potentially in NATO and whatnot. There's also concerns about pressure on independent media and there's accusations of politically motivated prosecutions. So this has been going around since the beginning of the war. These are not new accusations, but they certainly seem to gain steam when, and this is why I referred to this as Zelensky shooting himself in his own foot, even if he can eventually prove that there was in fact infiltration of Russian intelligence in these agencies, the optics of trying to tackle this issue by basically removing the independence of these agencies that have this dictate to supervise, to audit the government and the government accounts, right? This doesn't look good, and it certainly could be one of the reasons for the European Union to consider, for instance, decoupling the accession process of Ukraine from that one of Moldova. Right now, Ukraine and Moldova are on the same track of accession, but there's internal talk, and this internal talk could very quickly turn into internal action within the European Union, that the two country processes of accession to the European Union need to be decoupled so that Moldova can move forward and Ukraine can move on a slower timeline towards achieving these goals of anti-corruption, transparency, basically independence and democratic processes that can be demonstrably proven by the Ukrainians as a move towards their complete the complete consolidation of their democratization. Having said that, though, I do need to couch all of this with saying that achieving the consolidation of a democracy, the elimination of corruption, and good democratic practices while at war is certainly a tremendous challenge, and that needs to be taken into account as we evaluate the performance of this government.
Daniela Melo, thank you very much for talking to A News. We appreciate you joining us from London. Thailand and Cambodia reaffirmed their shaky ceasefire on Wednesday after China helped mediate a peace process to end days of border fighting. 5 days of intense clashes between their Southeast Asian neighbors that began last week killed at least 43 people, many of them civilians, and displaced more than 300,000 until a truce was agreed in Malaysia on Monday. Our Asia correspondent Laura Westbrook has more.
The ceasefire that was reached in Malaysia was supposed to take effect at midnight local time on Monday. However, it was quickly tested. Thailand's army accused Cambodia of launching attacks in multiple areas early on Tuesday. Cambodia said there was no firing in any location. The Thai army then reported exchanges of gunfire into Wednesday morning, but said there was no use of heavy artillery. A Thai military statement said if violations persisted, then Thailand would take action, while Cambodia accused Bangkok of distorting the facts on the ground. Now, China stepped in to broker an informal meeting between Vice Foreign Minister Song Lei-dong and officials from Cambodia and Thailand in Shanghai on Wednesday. Beijing said both Cambodia and Thailand reaffirmed to Beijing their commitment to abiding by the ceasefire. China's foreign ministry said it was its latest diplomatic effort to play a constructive role in resolving the border dispute. And analysts say China's peacemaking efforts show its concerns about instability in its backyard, and that China's move to make its diplomacy public was in response to the U.S. approach. Donald Trump gave an ultimatum threatening to stop trade negotiations unless the two countries agreed to stop fighting. Meanwhile, Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Manet appealed on Thursday for the Thai side to return 20 soldiers it had detained hours after a ceasefire had started. Thailand's acting Prime Minister said they would be released after Thailand had completed investigations into the circumstances. Laura Westbrook for A News in Hong Kong.
China has announced plans to conduct naval exercises with Russia as the two countries seek to strengthen military ties. Our correspondent Mahnur Maktoum has more from Beijing.
China has announced it will hold joint naval exercises with Russia in August, reinforcing deepening strategic and military ties between the two nations. The drills will take place in the sea and airspace near Vladivostok, a strategic Russian port city on the Sea of Japan. The Chinese Defense Ministry spokesperson Zhang Xiaogang has said that selected units from this exercise will participate in a joint follow-up patrol in the designated ocean areas. The announcement comes amid heightened geopolitical tensions and coincides with a separate U.S.-led military exercise involving Japan, Australia, and other Indo-Pacific regions. The move by Beijing is seen as a coordinated response to what it views as increasing Western military encroachment in Asia. This cooperation and drill is expected to enhance strategic cooperation between Chinese and Russian naval forces, further solidifying their defense cooperation amid the ongoing geopolitical realignments. Manu Maktoum, A News, Beijing.
Russia has invited Syrian President Ahmad al-Sharaa to attend the first Russia-Arab League summit set for October 15th. The invitation was confirmed during talks in Moscow between the two foreign ministers. Discussions focused on Syria's political transition, regional security, and continued diplomatic engagement, including earlier contacts in Turkey. Syrian officials framed the visit as part of efforts to restore stability and strengthen bilateral relations with Moscow. Previously, we spoke with Osama Rizvi, energy and economic analyst, regarding the Israel-Syria meeting hosted by Baku.
this is a development that is every month or in the previous year at least has taken further significance. You see, like I'll start from COP29. That happened in Baku as well. It showed how Baku has gained its place in the international arena diplomatically and otherwise. And the reason for choosing this meeting particularly in Baku is, of course, that the Baku serves as a neutral zone as compared to Vienna or any other country if they would have opted for that. Azerbaijan enjoys good relation with Israel and also functional relation with Syria and Russia. So, and Azerbaijan also intends to play a very positive role in the region, and we have seen that happening. So I think that those are the reasons that Baku has been opted as the place for the meeting. If we follow the latest developments in southern Syria, there has been an escalation in matters and specifically a lot of issues on the sectarian side. The sectarian clashes have worsened. And if it is not stopped right now or curtailed, I think this region is very tricky. There are lots of moving pieces and there is a chance of spillover, hence the urgency of the meeting. Well, it might be too early to say that this meeting would turn into a regional realignment or a strategic turn in Syria's recently launched chapter. There might be some tactical, short-term things that that come up in the meeting. There might be some agreements, localized, regionalized, but there would be, I would like to see the support of other countries in the region, especially the Middle Eastern countries, for it to be properly called a strategic realignment, such as UAE, Saudi Arabia. So it's a wait and watch approach right now.
The Eurasian Economic Union and Iran will approve a roadmap in September to implement their free trade agreement for 2025 to 2028. The plan aims to boost duty-free trade on 90% of goods and deepen cooperation across key sectors, including logistics, agriculture, and petrochemicals. EAEU officials say trade with Iran rose by nearly 15% this year, reaching $5.9 billion. The agreement is expected to further strengthen economic ties between the two sides. In a statement from prison opposition leader Mamuka Kazaradze has accused the Georgian government of sabotaging the Anaklia deep-sea port project. As new talks with the Chinese company move forward, the port's future now raises fresh questions about Georgia's geopolitical alignment.
From behind bars, the opposition leader Mamuka Kazaradze has accused the ruling Georgian Dream Party of what he called sabotaging the Anaklia deep-sea port project. In his statement, Kazaradze claimed that the government deliberately obstructed a development vital for Georgia's national interests. He argued that the Anaklia port could already be operational today, bringing thousands of jobs and turning Georgia into a regional transit hub if it had received Western backing from the very beginning. But for now, the current government is pursuing another options. Ties have reportedly been developing with Chinese communication construction company, or other CCCC. If the deals goes through, the Georgian government will own 51% of this project, while the CCCC will hold the remaining 49% and serve as the main contractor. The supporters of this potential deal argue that Chinese firms bring financing, speed, and experience, the factors that could finally launch construction after the years of delay. But critics warn that partnering with U.S. blacklisted company could strain Georgia's future relationship with Washington and pull the country farther from its declared Euro-Atlantic path. The Anaklia deep-sea port was originally envisioned as a Western-oriented project with a high-capacity gateway between Europe and Asia, giving access to deep waters for large cargo ships. For now, with government's efforts and plans to select the investor still underway, the project's future hinges not only on contracts or logistics, but also on geopolitical direction Georgia chooses to take. It's Nini Nikolaishvili reporting from Tbilisi, A News.
The National Bank of Georgia has kept its key interest rate unchanged at 8%, citing stable inflation expectations and strong economic growth. Inflation rose to 4% in June, mainly driven by global food prices. But once inflation but core inflation remains below target amid robust 8.8% growth in the first 5 months of 2025. The bank revised its full-year forecast to 7.4%. However, risks from global tensions and volatile commodity markets persist. The bank says further rate decisions will depend on updated forecasts and risk assessments. The next policy meeting is set for September 10th. Traces of organic chlorides have been detected in Azerbaijani crude exported via the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline. Tamam Bayatli, head of communications at BP Azerbaijan, told A News that BTC Co. has conducted a comprehensive quality assessment of crude oil across all facilities along the pipeline. BP and SOCAR are working closely together to fully resolve the issue, and exports are continuing without any disruption or delay.
Traces of organic chlorides have been detected in some batches of crude oil sent to global markets via the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan (BTC) pipeline, one of Azerbaijan's main export routes. This information was confirmed following an inquiry by A News addressed to BP, the operator of the BTC project. Tamam Bayatli, head of communications at BP Azerbaijan, told A News that BTC Co. has conducted a comprehensive quality assessment of crude oil across all facilities along the pipeline. The results of the assessment confirm the presence of organic chlorides in some of the tanks at the Ceyhan terminal. Respective actions were taken to contain those tanks while continuing the loadings from the tanks that were assessed to be within the normal specification. BTC Co. has also continued to take necessary actions to fully resolve the issue. Currently, BTC export operations and loadings of Azeri crude at the Ceyhan terminal are continuing. The company is currently undertaking measures to fully resolve the issue in close cooperation with SOCAR, with sampling continuing prior to each loading. Tamam Bayatli told A News that based on BTC Co.'s assessment, ACG crude and SD condensate flowing to the Sangachal terminal, as well as crude in the tanks at the Sangachal terminal, are within the normal specification. Experts note that thanks to the timely measures taken by the company, there have been no stoppages or delays in the export process.
The United States and Turkey are moving closer to resolving their long-running dispute over the Russian-made S-400 missile system. U.S. Ambassador to Ankara Tom Barrack told Turkish media that a path will be found to resolve key defense disputes. He said the 2017 disagreement stemmed from a misunderstanding and noted shifting conditions. Barrack also expressed hope for progress on F-35 and F-16 issues as both nations aim to deepen trade ties, and NATO looks increasingly to Turkey for support. In central Turkey, a canyon carved by time is drawing in nature lovers and adventure seekers. Located in Kayseri's Yeşilhisar district, Avla Canyon offers visitors a dramatic landscape of narrow rock passages, towering cliff and colorful formations.
Tucked away in the heart of Anatolia, Avla Canyon unfolds like a scene from a nature documentary. It sits at the foot of the Taurus Mountains and is known for its natural beauty, historical sites, and proximity to the famous Soğanlı Valley. Stretching 3 kilometers through Kayseri's Yeşilhisar district, this striking canyon was formed along a fault line and sculpted over the years by powerful floodwaters. Avla Canyon itself was formed by an active geological fault, making the region a live example of natural earth movement shaping the land. With its steep cliffs, tight passages and vibrant rock colours, it's become a popular route for hikers and nature photographers. Some sections narrow to just 60 centimetres, offering a real sense of adventure as visitors squeeze between towering walls that rise up to 15 metres. The canyon lies in the middle of a wide plateau, and when sunlight hits the layered rock, it creates a natural light show, shifting tones from gold to rust red. Even on the hottest days, the cool breeze drifting through the rock corridors brings natural relief, making it what some call a natural air conditioner. Locals say the landscape is unlike anywhere else in Turkey and often compare it to Arizona or even Jordan's Petra. Thanks to its dramatic landscape and isolation, the area around Yeşilhisar has occasionally been used as a backdrop for Turkish historical films and documentaries. For those looking for a scenic, peaceful and slightly wild hike, Avla Canyon is quickly becoming one of the region's most remarkable spots.
That's all we have for now. Thank you for watching and have a lovely evening.